Annotations is really quite simple. It takes all the amendments that are made by Parliament and relates them to the original publication.
Cutting and pasting insets into books, striking out repealed legislation is something that historically legal publishing companies have done. Typically it happens at an editorial or production phase, after which then legal publishers in other countries have gone and printed loose leaf or banned legislation which they've delivered and sold to their customers.
The annotations as we know it, as we provide it, appears to have only happened in New Zealand.
What the founders of the Brookers business did was go into the offices of their customers and undertake that cutting and pasting and annotating on site.
Once they printed the Statutes of New Zealand as in 1908, there was a golden opportunity for John Friend to start making changes subsequent. He actually made pencil notes in the margin of all the changes as they went through. He actually found that all the lawyers in Wanganui were coming around to look in his books. So really, to protect himself, he took off and copied his notes into their books.
So really it was a brilliant identification of something incredibly simple that made life a lot easier for customers, but also enabled the business to take advantage of a need that the lawyers at the time had, and in fact still have.
John Friend started the business in 1910. His widow Ethel carried on the business before she got in a bit of a pickle, and my father came along and sorted it out for her and ended up marrying her, and about 4 years later they separated. Effectively my father came away with the business and I took over in 1962 and I sold to Thomson's in 1994.
The annotations business now is very, very similar to what it was in 1910.
The method that we use is really based still on exactly what John Friend did. We are constantly sorting out the mess that Parliament are making and relating it back to the original piece of legislation.
Well, when you talk to other companies in the Thomson Reuters group about the annotation service, it really is a reaction that borders on disbelief.
100 years. I can't be held responsible for all that.
So typically people don't quite understand it, and when you explain it to them, they ask the question, goodness, how is that still? How is that still going?
The volume of legislation just grew exponentially. So our business grew even if we found no new customers, but we did find heaps of new customers and it was very successful.
One of the things that really makes annotation stand out in our portfolio is it's not actually a product, it's a service.
I was amazingly lucky because my father developed the business without ever any intention of making any money, so that I had a huge goodwill which we capitalised on. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't destroy it.
Monetarily, it's still one of our biggest revenue earners. The service endures really because of its people. Many of our annotators have been with us for more than 20 years.
We've got more than 20 annotators spread right throughout New Zealand.
I began annotating in 1965 when I was 17 years old. After I talked to Mr. Brooker, I recall my father ringing our local lawyer and saying, "Have you heard of this Brooker and Friend?" And he said, "Oh yes, they annotate our statutes."
The people who make the best annotators are probably people who are looking for a lifestyle.
Well, first of all, it has to be somebody that doesn't mind working by themselves.
They have to be people who are happy to have constant change and that they go to different places all the time, so they don't have the security, if you like, of coming into an office.
I've got all around New Zealand, from Kaitaia to Invercargill.
They have to be people who like people and represent the company in a dignified manner.
When I took over, there was an instruction book that went along, and the annotator had to read the instruction book and then do the ruling and then paste in the inset. And it was very time consuming. They also had little rubber stamps that connected the ruling to the actual inset.
It was quite frenetic when we were working because you'd be writing the work and then they'd be going dunk, 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 stamping your stamp on the pad and then on the book.
So we systemised all that out and used a number reference system, and we actually made the rules very tight. Once it was systemised, it was able to be very much more efficient. We estimated that if a person used a fraction of 1% of the work we did, it would more than pay for what we were producing for them. There are thousands of stories about annotators, most of which have been embellished over time.
When we were younger, I don't do it now, but when we were younger we used to just get in any old how. I recall at the Rawene Court, finding a door that we could get through, and going in and doing the books and going out, and don't know if anyone was aware we'd been or not.
One particularly interesting milestone in recent years was the red pencil lead saga. We had to scour the world to find the right type of red lead, which I think we eventually sourced in Eastern Europe.
In the courthouse in Otrahonga, we didn't like the tea they'd produced us, so we poured it into a pot plant, and that was all very well until we found it running down the wallpaper behind the desk.
We do know that there are people coming into practice now who still prefer to have the book in front of them. We're hoping that will continue into the future.
All we can say is that as long as our customers find that way of accessing legislation to be useful and they value the service that the annotators provide, we'll continue to support it.